Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you everyone for joining. On behalf of طويق Academy and Atom Camp Arabia, I welcome all of you and I thank you for joining today's talk. This is a very important topic and a lot of discussion, debates in sciences, in social sciences these days is happening about AI in healthcare. So we are going to talk today about it. So I'll introduce myself, my fellow today's panelist. I'm d.Noweid Iftihar. I'm co-founder of Atom Camp Arabia. So atomcamparabia.com you can visit. So Atom Camp Arabia is a data science and AI training company. We've been working in other parts of the world for the last 2 years. We've been operating in the kingdom and we've been doing trainings with MCIT, with other partners as well, with industry players, and a number of AI products and solutions to solve problems in different sectors. So with me, we have Dr. Mobeen Javed. She's a professor of artificial intelligence. She has done her PhD from UC Berkeley, postdoc from there. Her area of interest lies at the intersection of artificial intelligence, data privacy, and information security. So as today we are going to talk about AI in healthcare, so we'll be talking a lot about data, information security, privacy. So some of the challenges which are at the intersection of AI and healthcare and information security. So we'll try to make it more interactive. We have a dedicated Q&A session at the end as well. So generally every speaker says that I'll try to make it interactive, but usually they forget it. So if I forget, you need to remind me. So you need to contribute, you need to raise issues, we need to talk together, we need to learn together. And I and Dr. Mobeen, both of us will be sharing our perspective. But this is an evolving field. A lot of work has been done, and still there is so much uncertainty around this field. Especially, you'll see everyone talking about AI in healthcare as a startups, as health tech, and some news happening in laboratories, in hospitals, in academia. But when it comes to deploying these healthcare solutions at a scale, it really becomes challenging. What are really those challenges that hospitals, governments, people, and scientists are struggling with? We'll also talk about that. And some of the easy wins, those are already helping in the field. Medical practitioners, common citizens, technicians, scientists, drug scientists as well. So we'll talk about some of these things as well. So I'll skip agenda. And I have a question for you. So will you trust an AI model or a doctor for diagnosis? And you need to tell why. Why do you trust anyone, AI model or a doctor?
I think for the camping, I would trust the doctor.
You will trust the doctor?
To my knowledge or from my experience, I still hallucinate, and I wouldn't want it to hallucinate for my diagnosis.
Okay, that's good.
I trust the doctor who uses an AI model because I think we're all humans and even the doctor makes mistakes. So it's easier to have an AI model to just eliminate some things and help them diagnose.
Okay.
But of course, it needs to be an expert doctor. We don't need doctors who rely on AI models.
Okay. Anyone else? And any other reason that you want to tell?
See, I just want to take out the old world and say with AI model with a doctor together will be perfect.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, anyone else?
You will trust the AI model.
You will trust AI model. Okay. Yeah, I also trust a driverless car, but once.
Shut down, but the doctor, human, maybe someone one day will tell anybody about myself.
Okay. So, not to tell you that, who do you need to trust, that will be at the end of the day, you need to have that right. who do you want to have a trust? So that's also a big debate happening in healthcare. And this is also, will come to this topic as well, but I'm just sharing you the idea. This is called explainable AI. Okay. So this is a big field in healthcare, that you went there and someone has treated you and they say that, oh, there was an AI model and we diagnosed you with that AI model. So you have a right to know about what that model was, how that was trained, where data was collected. So this is a branch of explainable AI that we will talk about. But I'm just giving you this statistics. This is just one of the study. It was published in a medicine journal as well. So it's reported by Hopkins Medicine. That it's a long article. You can go on Hopkins Medicine. You can just browse that. Misdiagnosis by doctors in America. So we are talking about America because those data sets are usually available to scientists, researchers, and there is more research happening on these aspects. But there is this study that reported that, in 1 year, there were 795,000 Americans die or permanently disabled by diagnostic error each year. So this is not saying about misdiagnostic. I don't know how many have been misdiagnosed. So, and how many were even reported, how many were not reported. So having said that, so what does it mean? So, we just need to dig deeper as well. And this does not mean that we shift to AI model. This only means that the problem exists actually. So this is a genuine problem in healthcare, and that is diagnostics actually. And this treatment follows diagnostics, and if it is misdiagnosed, and there are certain diseases where this ratio is very high, and on certain diseases this ratio is very low. In the same study, they reported about, on average, 15% misdiagnosis actually. And for some diseases, it was only 1.5%. For some diseases, it was even up to 60%. So, that is the reality. So, and it does not mean, still it does not mean that we shift immediately to AI, but it means there is a problem. And similar problem exists in healthcare. But still, I've given this one number, but I've also not given that how many total number people were diagnosed, and out of those diagnosed, how were actually misdiagnosed. So that is there in the study. Still, it's a minor number, but it tells us that there is a problem. So I think what he talked about, if we see the future coming together, so there are different things happening in AI, and still AI is not at that level where it can operate autonomously in many cases, particularly in a regulatory setting where it needs approvals by regulators as well. So in the field, in hospitals right now, the right thing is where AI and doctors working together, and this is happening actually. So sometimes, because doctors have to do all that diagnostic themselves, so they can get the initial report by some AI models, they can still look at it, and then there is a whole study of actually this discipline that is called studying the risks and uncertainties. So that is also applied there. And so doctors are trained, but over the time these AI models will really get better, and in some of these diagnoses they are already better. Like, there are certain use cases where they are doing much better. We'll talk about it. So I'll just tell you, one of our expert who works with us, he is based out of Bay Area. So he did his postdoctorate at Harvard Medical College, and his work is on diagnostic of breast cancer. And his model, there was a competition that happened in Netherlands, global competition, and they invited pathologists and they also invited certain AI models. The accuracy rate of this AI model was much better than a pathologist human. So in some cases it will not perform, in some cases it will perform. So we'll also talk at the end of this presentation actually then how to decide this thing. How really, whether we should go for this particular AI model or not, or which one is better actually. That's called evaluating AI models. So we'll talk about it at the end of the presentation, but I hope that message is clear there are problems in the healthcare which AI can solve, and certain problems it has already solved, but it also has created new set of problems. So that is something that we need to understand. So what are, like I mentioned mainly, so here we are talking about the global healthcare problem. In some countries, one problem is worse than the other problem. So it really depends that which society we are living in and what kind of problems we are facing. So I can tell you, like in clinical and patient care challenge, countries, societies, they face the issues of shortage of doctors. They face issues of shortage of specialists, inequities in healthcare. There are rare diseases for which there is also this term that is used in the United States. Those are called orphan drugs. Below certain level, if that disease is not prevalent, then you know that nobody is interested in investing, and then the US government has introduced this orphan drug system. Accurate diagnostic. And then if you talk about operational and system challenges, there are administrative burdens, long patient waiting times. So there are many such challenges. So let's assume now we are talking about the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So if I have to talk about just one healthcare challenge generally that exists in this society, which requires a lot of data, which requires a lot of AI modeling. So what is your guess actually? Waiting time, okay. Yeah, that's also a problem. What else? Labs. Patient history. Okay. What else? Patient record. ER. Yeah. What else? So these are sort of universal problems. They'll be in other systems and probably much worse than what are in the kingdom. The healthcare system is pretty better than so many other countries. So there is one classical problem that this country has, and there is a lot of data and AI being used, and that is the communicable diseases. And due to Hajj and Umrah operations, and you see so many people come in this country and from so many countries, and they come, they visit, they go back. So this is a classical case of studying the modeling for communicable diseases actually. That because when we build such models, we want to see that a person who is coming from any country, what is the prevalent structures, patterns, and diseases in that country, and how other people are coming, what are they taking from here actually, what are they bringing in terms of diseases. So right now a lot of work is done by Ministry of Health in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to understand that, to develop models. There are people who develop mathematical models, there are people who are working on statistical models. So this level of operations, managing and understanding this data set without artificial intelligence is near to impossible, because you need almost a global model actually, because people are coming from almost every country. So the health ministry, they deployed such models in the COVID-19. They've been working on that. But I just want to tell you that this is a very, very classical problem that you can say more prevalent in this country than other countries. And this is where data and AI is helping to solve these problems. So, there are so many other areas which we'll talk about today. And but one thing I want to tell you, there are people who are already from AI background, some are beginners actually. So all what we need to understand that this whole AI is based on data, and data is very important. And how AI model learns, what is the primary definition of intelligence is actually learning, and a continuous learning. So when there was a pre-programmed systems, robots and all these are pre-programmed. But the AI models, we are feeding data, they are observing, they are learning and continuously. And sometimes when you say that AI make mistakes, this only makes mistakes because it's intelligent, just like us humans. So we are also intelligent and we make mistakes. So if we are dumb and we are pre-programmed, we will never make a mistake. So this AI, that is also because this is something that artificial intelligence systems are learning, and this whole thing is actually data. And how do we know about, like, if I have to develop a model predicting someone's life expectancy in Saudi Arabia of any certain person, how will I do it? Because I need a lot of data of so many Saudis, men, women from different regions, rural, urban, all different types of people. What were their habits? What were they eating? What were they exercising? And what was their clinical history? So if I develop all these models, then I can see that, because AI is all about prediction. So prediction is not a miracle actually. Prediction is a science. So science, and most of the time in healthcare, we do in both ways. Sometimes we just need correlation to see that what is going to happen. Sometimes we need causality actually. So in healthcare, when particularly we talk about public health, we are not just interested in correlation, we are also interested in causality, causation in a way that how can someone have a longer life, what actions they need to take, what actions the government, society need to take so that they can live longer. So now this is a causation problem. So I really need to understand those variables which can really lead to that longer life. But if I just need to predict it, so I just want to say that, on average, what will be the life of such and such person who has such and such medical records. So this is where the data and machine learning comes in, that we train the models with data. And this is also important, that sometimes we get models from US, some Western countries and everywhere. But every geography, every person, every society has a different genes actually. And we'll come to it, genetics as well. We have different genes, different socioeconomic conditions. So due to those conditions, we need our localized data. And this is the reason that there is also a lot of research being funded in the kingdom, and many hospitals, many organizations and universities are doing, because you cannot just say that this is the model and it was developed in the US, and this is chest x-rays model. You can see a chest x-ray and you can determine what's happening. So you really need to see that how your chests are different from those ones, what data is there. Dust in Riyadh is different than what's other cities. So really you need to see these things. So that's important to understand the role of data. So what really affects the training data quality? The workers, people, that's important, that who are the people who are involved in data training, in selection. Sometimes, my team develop AI models and they say, this is hallucinating. So I say, no, this is not hallucinating. AI developer was hallucinating actually. So you didn't test it well, you didn't develop it well, and no, this is a common excuse, it's hallucinating. Yes, it does hallucinate. And over the time, we are dealing with that problem as well. And then processes as well, whether we've developed good processes, communication, protocols, and this is also something very, very important. And same, this is again, I won't spend much time. We've already talked about data processing and everything. So I'll talk many case studies, and same case study that I was mentioning earlier. This is another case study of breast cancer. Because cancer across the world, there are some diseases where more and more AI is being applied. Cancer is one of such diseases. The reason is that cancer is much better treatable if it is diagnosed early. So the issue is really the diagnosis actually. To some extent, we figured out the treatment as well. But that treatment doesn't work if it is already a stage 2 or 3 or beyond that. So if it is stage 1, in many cases, people recover and this is much more treatable. So again, this is the diagnosis problem that often, human doctors, they cannot see what is in front of there. They cannot establish a large scale data to establish the correlation. So this AI models are helping us to understand it. So any question, any comment so far? I forgot that I promised you that we'll make it interactive. Huh? You also forgot. Okay. So anything? All good? Yeah.
We're always focusing on only one diagnosis. Like for me, I'm suffering from something else that not everyone is knowing about it. So for me, I think we have to make or we have to create an AI not focusing on only diagnosis, on only something. For me, multiple sclerosis, no one talks about it. No one can. There's not a lot of research about multiple sclerosis. So that's the reason why I came here. I'm focusing on AI using for this diagnosis. So do you have a comment about it? Do you have something we can create for this diagnosis, or should we create for the patient for multiple sclerosis?
So I'll just add one perspective, then Dr. Mobeen will also add. I'm not a medical doctor. We are data and AI professionals, and we won't comment on the treatment of any particular disease just based on what we've read on newspaper or what we've read on ChatGPT. So that is obviously a medical professional's job. But what I'm telling you, where that is actually the future of medicine that AI is helping to carve out. And this is the personalized treatment, personalized, diagnosis, and also, at some point of time, very personalized treatment as well. Because right now, a drug, like there are certain drugs that we make them and everyone uses them. But this future was not possible because it requires a huge amount of data. And still, that data we are getting there. I do not know about that particular disease. We can search. In the lack of data. Dr. Mobeen, would you like to add something?
No, I just wanted to echo what Dr. Mobeen was saying, that part of the issue is lack of data.
We both are not medical doctors,
yes.
so don't
We are
doctors
PhD
without knowledge of medicine.
Yes. But I think AI now is helping solve some of the issues, especially for rare diseases, because one of the challenges, so I work in information security and privacy, and as you all might agree, medical data is one of the most sensitive and private data, right? I mean, if I ask, for example, in this room, how many of you would be willing to share your medical histories to train an AI model, a lot of you probably would say, I'm not very comfortable with that, right? But now we have technologies which are privacy preserving, where, for example, we can have data from multiple hospitals where they do not need to share data across the hospitals. We'll talk about it in this presentation as well. One of the techniques is federated learning. So with these advancements in technology, we are moving closer towards solving these challenges of rare diseases. So there is hope. Yes.
Yeah, there is a hope. And obviously, that how long it takes, discoveries take longer, treatments take longer, trials, experiments, drug approvals, drug regulatory authorities approvals, all these things are really, really regulated. And these drug regulatory authorities have really to have a struggle between innovation and the safety sometime, because they do want to innovate, but they also maintain the safety of patients actually. So that's the struggle that most of the time the regulators have to do.
For my opinion, I think more patient history, more
Yes, yes.
We need a lot of data.
Yeah. So this is now we are coming towards with more digital gadgets, digitalization. So I think there are this hope of rare diseases that we can get better into. And there are people work. I'm sure there are so many AI solutions around what you are mentioning, but we can look into it later. So what is the results? Actually, there is this huge improvement happening in the world where early cancer detection is possible, and we'll talk to you about some of those aspects. How it is helping actually establishing a large set of data, correlations, seeing patients' history, looking at images that humans couldn't find out anomalies that these cameras and the computer vision actually found. So that's where it is helping in many ways. So, but there are really, like what the debate that we were earlier having in healthcare, the challenge is actually in data-driven healthcare are patient privacy and diverse data sets. So this is what is stopping at many levels, even countries actually. In a full country, if you have to establish AI models, then you need to really collect data from so many hospitals, laboratories, and everyone. And every hospital, every laboratory will have a regulatory restriction or a business restriction of not sharing data. So that is something which is really and then the AI is also finding solution of that problem. So this old problem that the old solution that we had is actually that de-identify, remove personally identifiable information. So this is what we've been relying on, that you can actually pull out their names and everything, and you still work on their attributes, so that data is not shared with anyone. But that's also was not working, and it was really not helping. No one was still willing to share data.
Maybe we can just do a quick interactive exercise
Yeah.
here to maybe ask the participants that, the question that I asked before, that if you would be willing to share your medical histories, but let's say I just tell you that now, would you be willing to contribute your data if I just remove your name? So how many
But you
people
will
would
see their names actually, that's the problem. But if you are sending data to her, she will know that you sent her, even you don't have your name on that. So that's problem. Pardon?
Instead of personal, someone share information, there is an example, Habib Hospital, they clean up the personal data and share it with you. It's a different way.
Very good, very good. I'm just like playing devil's advocate that she promised you that she will delete, but what if she has not deleted?
But is anyone uncomfortable with this idea of sharing their medical history, or everyone is happy to share if?
So show of hands if you are.
Yes. So show of hands, how many people would be willing to share if basically the data is anonymized? If I promise that I will remove, the names of. So some people, but not everyone in the room, right?
But they trusted you, 6 or 7 people,
Yes.
without knowing you.
Yes. Yes, but I think just to so there are protocols in place. So the institutional review boards, where you have a certain sort of agreement that this data will only be used for research purposes in so and so fashion, and this particular protocol will be followed. But one of the major challenges in anonymization is that anonymization can actually be broken, especially for medical data. So if there is, for example, a security breach, and let's say that someone is able to de-anonymize because the fingerprint or the data it's just so unique for everyone. Maybe it's a brain scan, or is it some information about your medical history that I can map back to your name. So this idea of anonymized data sets is not a foolproof solution in the medical field, and we need to go beyond, especially if we want to train AI models. And now we'll be talking about what are some of those methods through which you can maintain the privacy while still training AI models.
So
there is a concept called the localization of the data. I think it's something can be worked, but the data cannot be moved from one place to another.
Yes,
what did you mention?
Yes. That's exactly
Okay.
what we will be talking about now. The
So usually
federated
for
learning.
such
Yeah?
questions, I have a prize actually.
Yes.
Yeah, this is for you. You've guessed it right,
Yeah,
but
I'm a bold man, so that
yeah, that will
Oh,
work for
nice.
you, you know. Yeah. So this is okay. So you know there is this problem that we earlier mentioned. So now there are these two actually developments which have been happening in, and you know they've been tested in different ways. This is called federated learning and swarm learning. So SWAM and federated learning are two models through which now this is possible, which was not possible before. So how is it being done? We'll talk about it. Instead of bringing data to model, bring model to data actually. So this is something that is happening, and this is the federated learning. So the way it is happening, said earlier, we were asking this hospital, this hospital, this hospital, bring your data here, send your data. So send your data and I'll develop a model. You know, that maybe I'm asking in the kingdom every hospital to send data and I am developing a model. So, but no, that's not the case. We have a basic model, we've developed it, and we've sent it to all hospitals. So they have run their own data, they have trained the model, and they have tested it, and they've actually sent back the model, not the data. So what does it mean? The weights, the parameters, and all these things, that this model looks better. So this hospital, so this is the federated server. So it is actually accumulating and it is working on all these parameters and developing a model, calibrating it, which really works actually. Will you like to add something to it? Okay. So that's the, you know, that is the way forward. So this also gives another hope that we'll get more and more data, because in this way, you know, that is, but the issue is, what is still there is an issue. That's why we found a new solution. The issue is that it has to be a trusted, still a trusted central body. So like it can be a government body. Okay. So that government body of health ministry, suppose asking all data and everything, but still some may say, you know, this is our private patient data, so we should not share even to the government agency. So that's also still a problem, but to a large extent, many people in US, UK, Europe, they've implemented this, and they've implemented along with NVIDIA, some universities and some hospitals. So far the major breakthroughs in this model have happened, because you really need a lot of you know, computing power here as well. So you need a distributed computing as well as computing. So this is where the NVIDIA is playing a role actually. So this is the changing the way algorithms are trained, you know, this particular federated learning, and multiple parties train collaboratively without centralized data sets. So this is where we can have privacy, we can have more innovative research, we can have precision medicine, and we can have a large scale validation. Because what happens, you know, there are so many people and startups, sometime they'll walk in and they'll say, I've developed a model, but that is not really tested across a wider population, you know. So that data is really missing. So this is something that this model is helping actually. So these are open source platforms for federated learning that I mentioned about, NVIDIA, Google, OpenFL, FedML. So they are working on that, these models. So this is also, this happened on COVID-19 patients, and there are many other, you know, on cancer treatment, on many other diseases. Actually, there are use cases and papers have been published where researchers have used this model. But still, you know, there was this problem that was lying there, and this was happening. And then finally, this new model is actually, which is bringing, you know, blockchain to its use. Because for blockchain we have distributed ledgers, and these distributed ledgers are where there is no central authority now. okay, and they all have distributed systems and data and edge nodes, and they all are developing these models, and they are actually relying a lot on these parameters in part of that network, where they are getting these parameters, but still not losing the control of data, and still not giving their model to any single entity. So they all are just in the control of their model. So that's also something that's happening. It also has its lot of challenges. More computing power required, decentralized computing, and there are sort of more complex areas where this is being used. Yeah.
So actually, it's an interesting solution. But I was thinking if actually like companies and other hospitals collaborated with this. I'm thinking of when you connect all of the models. So like let's say the model separately had been trained, and then you connect it together. Isn't this should be like a challenge at the bias side? The model should be biased because there is a set of data that had been trained. How this kind of like can be handled?
So that challenge is there. We are still struggling. And that challenge is also, in a way, it is more prominent in the previous model, because all of them have had a different data structures. And then we were developing actually one model. But in this case, they are actually learning from this network and everything, but they are developing this model in coordination with each other. And this is helping in that way. But the challenge that you've mentioned, I think these challenges are still there. Dr. Mubin, would you like to add?
Maybe I can add if there is a bias, if it exists, because let's say there's just not enough demographic diversity in the data set, right? If it is trained on, let's say, one particular skin color or one particular area, then that's something that AI cannot sort of like tackle automatically. So that's something that is still on the folks who are developing the models to actually collect more diverse data sets. However, one thing that I wanted to mention is that the way these models are actually aggregated, at the end of the day, there are multiple ways to do that, right? So if, for example, different hospitals are contributing different amounts of data, so someone is contributing 50%, the other one is contributing 20%, and yet another one 10%. So you can take a weighted average of their sort of parameters and somehow try to see that you can balance out the representation in some way. But you're absolutely right in that we cannot altogether get rid of the bias unless we have underlying diversity in the demographics. Yeah.
So from our maybe the radiology when there is X-ray taking place for the COVID-19, maybe maybe someone will report it as it is normal, but when you go to the center, data center, maybe it will analyze again. It can be.
It's not analyzing it again. In fact, so what we showed on the slides was how the model is being trained, right? So you start with the centralized server and you initialize some weights, right? So it's an iterative learning procedure. So what will happen is that those weights are sent to the individual hospitals, and then they will train the model and they send the updated weights back to the central server. So you also, because it's a development and training process, so there is accuracy that is being measured. And so at the time when we are happy with the accuracy, at the time then that's the finalized model that is then shipped back to the individual hospitals.
So it will not be checked again.
No. It will be the same. So whatever model you finalize, that will essentially be the one. But keep in mind that this is an iterative process where there is a back and forth, and there is a check on the accuracy, and that's how the model is being trained. Yeah.
But there is this whole separate debate where your question was the basic, if there is something that's false positive, or
I mean the difference between the two models.
Okay. The difference between
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Should be then change the results. So it will affect the result.
So there is, at the end of the day, no two different answers, right? Because what is being transmitted is the weights. So there are, let's say, 5 different models for 5 different hospitals. And then there is an aggregation procedure at the end of the day that is taking place at the centralized server. And the final result is actually whatever this you have trained based on this centralized server. So there will be only one answer.
We are now in EI.
Sorry?
We have now an EI time. So
Yeah.
the patient will get the result within maybe 10 minutes or 1 hour. The,
Yeah.
the whole research could take it 1 day or 2 days.
Right.
So if there is change in the result, X-ray,
Yes.
it will be something actual.
Yeah, but typically these models, they're sort of like trained one time, and then the sort of when it is deployed, right? So that's the final solution. So that's what you're relying on, and it's typically very fast. We can talk more after, maybe. Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So similarly, we've mentioned some of the areas where the AI is being used. So one area is diagnostics. Then we have this agentic AI to our help, actually. So these are medical agents which are performing diagnostics, which are helping doctors. Currently, in most of the times, other than very sophisticated robotics procedures, which are happening, and some of them are happening in the kingdom, in other parts of the world as well, where over the time they have achieved a lot of precision. Still more than artificial intelligence, most of the time it's pre-programmed robotic processes, actually. Little part of AI, but larger part of the existing evidence. So with this medical agents, gene editing, drug discovery, and precision medicine. So some of these okay. So some of this very interesting, actually, retina therapy that is happening, retinopathy that is happening. There are so many startups, actually, which are emerging these days that we never thought about, actually. With the eye retina, so this study is about many pilots which have been done, particularly diabetes that you can predict, you can diagnose very early. But there are many other startups. They are also looking at this retinopathy from so many different lenses. And one startup, actually based in the Bay Area, they have predicted so many diseases based on retina images, actually. Because that person, one startup, they started collecting all of these images of retina, and they started tracing those people, and they established this correlation that how many things which were actually visible to the machine, those were overlooked by a human doctor. So because that eye specialist was only interested in that time for eyesight only, but it was telling something else as well. So what was that they were missing, actually? So this is where this large scale data sets are helping. And similarly, the cancer that I mentioned earlier, many pilots have been done, actually. And then many.
We go back to the. I can see the breast cancer project is not. The HIPAA is not applied there.
Yeah. So when what happened that so many these privacy measures, when they experiment, they do these tests, they have to follow these protocols. So they have actually de-identification protocol they followed, they have followed IRB, they have followed HIPAA, that is for the health compliance protocol, GDPR compliance. So it means that they have already taken the privacy measures while doing all these experiments and deployment.
They should apply the HIPAA, right?
Yeah.
They're not apply the US project.
In the US project, de-identification, IRB, SKIO, the pilots in UK and US, this is one, this is one. Yeah. So I've mentioned IRB and secure data storage, but I can't comment whether they applied or not applied. So we have mentioned here, but I can't say whether they applied or not applied. It's not mentioned in here, but we can look at the case study. But this is the message that we want to give, that for all such health, these experiments, there are these protocols in different countries. If you are talking about in Saudi, like There is this the medical devices guidelines in Kingdom. What should be considered a software, what should be considered an AI, what should be considered a device. So you need to look at all these guidelines in any country that you are. But for scientists and researchers, this IRB is a standard practice that they have to take from their institutions wherever they are working. So similarly, there are so many models. I'll not go into that detail, but a lot of things which are happening on the diagnostic are happening on the images side, medical imaging. So the revolutionary part in diagnosis is medical imaging and data science, where actually we can analyze data, we can predict things, and we can identify timely these diagnoses, and we can see that it takes a long time in identification, reading. So at least the report can be ready immediately after seeing the X-ray, and then doctor can spend more time in more clinical examinations as compared to very basic, understanding of images. Similarly, there is so much work is happening now where AI agents are helping doctors as co-pilots actually. In most of the cases, in hospitals, in procedures, in ER rooms, there is this book I'm recently reading, and it has lot of actually case studies and use cases how doctors have been making mistakes in ER procedures, and those were reported at some point of time, the kind of mistakes they've done, how they do it, and often these are all avoidable mistakes. So this is where the co-pilots are helping, that making checklists, guidelines, procedures, protocols, and seeing everything is in place, supervising sometimes the procedures. So that is something that's happening. This Google DeepMind's MedPalm is working on that, fine-tuned for the medical domain. So its accuracy is also much better in some cases. So this also, over the time, what we were seeing actually, at some point of time, many of us may have browsed Google for any disease that we were having. So it always took us to so extreme that, at some point of time, we may have realized we don't need to browse it. So, because what was happening most of the time, because that was all unauthentic information that was coming. And this is also because in most of the cases, this is the Western medicine knowledge in the US. So there is this policy in the US to ruling out the extreme probability, extreme scenario first root out. So if someone has a headache, they will say there can be a tumor, there can be this, and there can be this. So they want to rule out that first, so that they can see there is nothing extreme. And this also started from when in the medical insurance business, and people started suing hospitals, doctors for not diagnosing. So there were many such challenges which were happening actually in this medical field, and where now these agents which are more intelligent, and they are reading, and you can also do the conversations, that they can only bring the information from authentic sources. But still it will remain a challenge for an ordinary person even to get that information from ChatGPT or anywhere. So still, whenever we are I am actually giving lectures on ChatGPT or prompt engineering, I still advise people that don't rely a lot on ChatGPT. You can browse for precautions or public health issues, but still for medicine, you just need to rely on a doctor until you have such AI agents which are approved by the drug authorities actually. So the time is coming where FDA has also, I think, approved. They have approved, I think, or not approved yet, the Google ones. So the time will come when they will approve all these models. They'll look at their weights, parameters, trainings, and then they'll approve. Then it will become authentic source. Otherwise, this will remain a challenge even for ordinary people. This Google was also a challenge due to lack of literacy, and still ChatGPT type platforms will remain a challenge where we try to diagnose, self-diagnosis, because we are not trained in that field. So that's the only difference that we need to understand. So there are many these limitations which the Google DeepMind has. And then in EHR, many things clinicians can chat with medical records through new AI softwares. So this is an easier thing. You have to look at charts, you have to look at sometimes treatments, medicine. The doctors have a knowledge base, but they still need to look at which medicine is good, what is the tests around that. So if doctor is practicing and they want to see which medicine I need to prescribe, so if doctor has such a help available to them, that is really revolutionary. But then not I reading that message and giving someone medicine, that again needs to be that licensed practitioner who can understand the difference, and that clinical practitioners is helping them more as a co-pilot. Again, this term that I like, that Microsoft has also introduced. So I like that term for AI, and we need to understand that in most of the cases this is actually a co-pilot for a doctor, and you can say that co-doctor. So there are also in drug discovery, so many things are happening, and where we also did not have proper diagnostic, proper data, with the large scale data, tests and drug recoveries, which are so many fields which are happening. I'll skip it and we'll go to a very interesting field, that is personalized medicine actually. So this is where we were talking about. And for personalized medicine, the issue that we were having is actually the data, and we did not have much data. And now, with AI, with digitalization, we are getting more into data, and this road towards personalized medicine, precision medicine, this is already there, being tested, being applied in certain cases, and I think in future it will revolve further. And then understanding the gene mutations, where this whole scientific research that happened through CRISPR and many other people who contributed to this research on genes. And so I think this is the humanities has a long sort of a dream to understand the human origins, and also this where everything is coming from. So I think this genetics is really helping in that way, and because it required a huge amount of data, so it was not possible analyzing it without artificial intelligence. And the gene mutations and for some of you, this is sometimes for a long time, this genes and this understanding, also for me it was something that it was hard to understand. So at some stage I read a book actually. This is really a good book. It's by Siddhartha Mukherjee. So if some of you want to have a very basic understanding of genomes and how these genes work, the evolution, the history, the biology behind it, so this is a nice book. It's written by Siddhartha Mukherjee. He is a scientist, cancer scientist, and book's name is The Gene: An Intimate History. So he has given his own history of family life and how genetics evolved historically, and I think that's a nice way for common people to understand what really the genes are. And then there are so many other people who have contributed. Particularly another book that I usually recommend for understanding these genes is also in this COVID-19. Recently there was this scientist who became famous, who got Nobel Prize, Jennifer Doudna. So Jennifer Doudna's Walter Isaacson has written a biography of Jennifer Doudna. So that also tells about her work, her commitment, and how she reached to these solutions as well. So there is also this discussion that is for a layman to understand, this genetic thing actually. So gene editing, again, I would refer that this is something that's we are closer to it. It is happening. There have been very successful experiments, some not so successful experiments, still at a very infancy stage. But I think we are closer to this area now. With this whole research, you can browse CRISPR, what it did, how this science evolved over the time. So these two books will actually really help you to understand the history around this genetics as well. So the last thing is very important, is actually, Dr. Mubin, can you share something on evaluations about evaluating AI models for healthcare quickly, and then we can have more questions.
Yes, so maybe I can actually again ask the audience here a question, which is that what do you think about what is the right metric for evaluating an AI solution? So if I develop, for example, a model for detecting some sort of like, let's say, cancer, what do you think is the right metric on how should I evaluate it?
A technical metric or?
It can be anything. Like, how would I know that this is something that is actually making a difference in, you know, the healthcare system and in patient care? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, the goal of why we're using AI in healthcare is to improve patient care, right? So how do I know that whatever solution I have developed, it's actually making a difference? Because we started the presentation with talking about the different challenges that are there in healthcare. There's shortage of doctors. Some of you contributed answers along the lines of there are long waiting times, and for example, in ER with the labs. So when I'm developing a solution, how do I know, or what is the metric that I use in order to determine whether I have really made a change in the system for the patients?
I can't think of something else than giving it to the short-staffed areas,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously it's short-staffed. So you would see the referrals from the AI model
Yes.
from this area. So now we're knowing that it's making a difference
Mm-hmm.
by
Right.
like giving the diagnosis. So when the patients actually come and they say, we were referred from the AI model,
Right.
you know that it's making a difference.
Mm-hmm. So your idea is that let's give it to, like, you know, the hospitals, and let's let them sort of like run it and see what outcome comes about, right? But don't you think there will be also a little bit hesitation from the hospitals? They would need some actually proof that it works, because you're changing their workflow, right? You're asking them to adopt a system, whereas there's also an existing system already in place. So, you know, the doctors or the nurses or the staff, they're already maybe doing it at the back of their hand, right? By just using their own minds, right? So one of the things that you know is important is not only to think about when we're thinking about AI in healthcare is not just that we're looking at the accuracy of these models, but we're also thinking about how basically these systems are going to be integrated in the clinical workflows, right? So if I think about what I'm really at the end of the day trying to improve is the patient care, and I want, like, you know, maybe them to get faster access to the services. Maybe I don't want to wait 3 hours for an X-ray report. I want basically that if as soon as my X-ray is taken, I can get a summary of what exactly is the issue with my sort of X-ray, right? So maybe we can go back to the previous slide. So a very nice framework here is the outcome action pairing framework, which is a guiding principle. I don't know how many of you are working actually in healthcare, but this is a framework that is introduced that says that you not only, whenever you're developing an AI system, you're not only just thinking about the outcome, which is the purpose of the AI model. You know, that can be, okay, disease diagnosis or risk stratification or event prediction, but you're going to pair it with an action, which is a clear evidence-based step that you're going to say that this can be taken in the clinical workflow based on the outcome, right? So this is going to actually result in improving the medical care for the patient. So this is a guiding principle that, you know, whenever we're thinking of deploying these systems, and a lot of these systems still, you know, there's a lot of promise with the proof of concept or the prototypes that are being developed, but we're still facing a lot of challenges in deploying these systems in actual clinical workflows. First of all, we run into these regulatory challenges, right? Who is responsible if something goes wrong, right? Because some of the systems that we have talked about here, for example, Google's MedPalm and MedGemini, I think that's what it is called, they were rigorously tested, you know, so they were not only tested using, for example, large data sets that were from patients Q&A, from consumer Q&A, but they also went through adversarial testing, which means that people were asking the people who were developing these systems, they were asking them whether, you know, philosophical questions where it is ethical to do one particular medical procedure or not, right? So you need to do all sorts of those adversarial testing as well. So although these systems have gone through multiple stages of that, and we see very nice accuracy up to maybe, I think, 90% now in the case of Google's medical chatbot, but still challenges remain in terms of deploying these and integrating these into the clinical workflows, because the cost is just so high. We're dealing with, really human lives here, right? So if something goes wrong, who is liable here? Who is accountable, right? So I think that's where perhaps we can close the conversation.
Yeah. So we'll have more questions, and I'll also summarize. Meanwhile, you can scan this QR code, and you can also highlight what you liked, what you didn't like, and your suggestions for further improvement. So meanwhile, I just want to summarize in a way that, and we can take more questions, your perspectives on that. So if we, start working on AI in healthcare, our dominant perspective is actually diagnostics. And where also diagnostics in most of the cases, it's safer in a way that we still have a human surveillance that we have on the decisions that our AI models are given. So like at the very start that he mentioned, there is not this thing, AI model or a doctor. So now we've entered into an era where AI model and a doctor, they are working together. And so that is something in diagnostic, where computer vision, where we are working around that. The second area, the safer area, is obviously, co-pilots for doctors, where they are helping them, understanding medicine, understanding the latest research, journal articles. Doctors don't get much time to be updated on latest knowledge, discoveries, experiments in their field. So this is helping a lot in this chat agents. The third thing that is happening with this whole AI, VR and AR is medical education actually. So all these medical education is being transformed, revolutionized with this AI models, and this is the third area of healthcare. And the fourth one is where is the community or public health actually coming in. So a lot of startups, recreation, health, sports, where we needed a data, but it was not available. With all the data now, we have better predictions and better models. And this is also an area where people are developing a lot of startups actually. And they are getting data, collecting data, the kind of exercises which really help in what kind of diseases or what kind of physique. So this is another area of public health where people are approaching towards it. And last message that I want to give, that this again required healthcare and interdisciplinary focus. So this does not require just people who are practicing doctors. There are this field where we need more and more scientists who are working in this area. And along with scientists, there are these computer scientists, AI engineers, and then along with AI engineers, then people who are coming from social sciences background, they are from moral philosophy, and they are raising questions. And sometimes, we people who are working on AI models, we don't like those questions. But, those questions ultimately guide the society for a better application of the healthcare system, and the governments are also adopting. So these are some of the 4 or 5 areas where AI in healthcare is advancing. And the purpose of this talk is also, especially for young people, if you want to advance your knowledge, your understanding in this particular field, then there is just realization that it needs a different sort of skill set, people coming from diverse backgrounds and working together to solve these challenges. So that's all, and we can continue with questions as well.